On a warm Friday afternoon, Officer Greg Matt was parked near the corner of Maple Street, not far from Bridgeport's bustling city center. He had just wrapped up his lunch break and was sitting in his patrol car, savoring the last sip of his coffee. Known for his attitude, Greg was one of those officers who saw his badge as a license to treat people however he pleased. Today, his attitude would lead him to an unforgettable lesson. Across the street, a well-dressed black man stepped out of a nearby cafe. His name was Marcus Harris, and he carried himself with a calm confidence. Although Marcus had grown up in Bridgeport, he had spent recent years working in another city. Unknown to Greg, Marcus had just been promoted to captain and was now assigned to Greg's precinct. But Greg was about to learn this the hard way. As Marcus crossed the street, Greg's attention shifted from his coffee to the man walking towards him. There was nothing suspicious about Marcus, but for someone like Greg, any excuse for confrontation was a good one. Squinting at the approaching figure, Greg tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Something about Marcus's composed manner rubbed him the wrong way. Without a second thought, Greg got out of his patrol car and slammed the door, marching over to block Marcus's path with an irritated glare. "Hey, you! What are you doing around here?" he demanded, his voice sharp and confrontational. Marcus halted, his calm eyes meeting Greg's, surprised but respectful. "I'm on my way to a meeting," he answered. But Greg had already decided he wasn't interested in the response. "You look like trouble," he sneered, stepping closer with an accusing tone. "Got any ID?" Keeping his composure, Marcus reached slowly into his jacket, careful not to make any sudden moves. "Of course, officer," he replied evenly, prepared to comply. But before he could retrieve his wallet, Greg's temper flared. "You think you can talk to me like that?" Greg growled, grabbing Marcus's arm roughly. Then, in a flash, he threw a punch that landed square on Marcus's face, causing him to stagger backward. The few people nearby who witnessed the punch froze, shocked by what they'd just seen. Steadying himself, Marcus raised a hand to his cheek, touching the spot where Greg's fist had landed. Greg, smirking, felt entirely justified. "Maybe now you'll show some respect," he scoffed. But as Greg began to turn away, Marcus stood upright, his gaze sharpening with unmistakable authority. "You just made a huge mistake, officer," Marcus said, his voice steely. "Oh, yeah? And what mistake would that be?" Greg scoffed, still clueless about who he was dealing with. "I'm Captain Marcus Harris," Marcus said, his eyes locked on Greg's. "The new captain of this precinct." Greg's smug expression vanished. His face paled as he processed Marcus's words, and his confidence crumbled. What did you say?" he stammered, struggling to absorb the revelation. "I said, I'm the new captain," Marcus repeated, standing firmly in front of Greg. "You just assaulted me, and I'm pressing charges." For a few intense moments, Greg stood there, frozen in disbelief, his mind racing to catch up. He couldn't believe what he'd done. He had just punched the new captain of his own precinct. The reality of his mistake hit him hard, and the power he'd felt only moments ago evaporated. Marcus didn't move right away. After a pause, he calmly reached into his jacket again and pulled out his wallet. This time, Greg didn't make a move. He watched silently, horror-struck, as Marcus produced his official ID card and held it up right in front of him. "I hope that clears things up," Marcus said calmly. "But just to be absolutely clear, you assaulted a superior officer. I'm pressing charges, and you're going to have to answer for this." Greg's stomach dropped, and although he opened his mouth, no words came out. The cockiness he'd felt just moments ago was entirely gone. He could feel the eyes of bystanders fixed on him, judging him. Marcus, composed and in control, wasn't finished yet. Without hesitating, Marcus took out his phone and dialed a number. Greg watched in silence as Marcus began speaking. "Yes, this is Captain Harris." I need a squad at Maple and Fifth Avenue. There's been an incident involving Officer Greg Matt. He paused briefly, listening. No injuries on my end, but I will be filing assault charges. Please send a unit right away. Greg's insides twisted as he began to understand what was unfolding. His career, everything he'd worked for, and every assumption he'd held about his authority were all slipping away right before his eyes. All the while, Marcus stood waiting, expression steady, for backup to arrive. Around them, a few pedestrians began whispering to one another. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others exchanged murmurs about the events they'd just witnessed. A few had even recorded the incident on their phones, something Greg hadn't noticed until now. The thought that this footage could end up on the news, or, even worse, on social media made him shudder. Soon, the sound of sirens pierced the air. 2 squad cars arrived, and from them stepped officers Greg recognized, men and women he worked with daily. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they approached. Sergeant Parker, a no-nonsense officer with over 20 years on the force, led them. Her eyes shifted from Marcus to Greg, her brow furrowing in confusion as she took in the scene. "Captain Harris," she said, nodding respectfully to Marcus before glancing back at Greg, a look of surprise on her face. "Sergeant Parker," Marcus replied. "I'm pressing charges against Officer Matt for assault. He punched me in the face without provocation." Parker's expression tightened in shock. She turned to Greg, who was now visibly pale and sweating. "Greg, is this true?" she asked. For the first time in his life, Greg was at a loss for words. He stammered, his usual confidence shattered. I didn't know he was a captain." Parker didn't let him finish. "It doesn't matter whether you knew or not. You assaulted a superior officer," she said bluntly. Then, turning to the other officers, she nodded. "Cuff him." 2 officers, colleagues Greg had shared countless breaks and laughs with, stepped forward. Their expressions were professional and impassive as they reached to handcuff Greg, who didn't resist. He knew it was over. Once Greg was restrained, Parker addressed Marcus. "Captain, we'll take it from here. Is there anything else you need?" Marcus shook his head. "Just make sure this follows protocol, Sergeant. I'll be filing formal charges as soon as we're back at the station." As the squad car pulled away from Maple Street, Greg felt the cold metal of the cuffs digging into his wrists. It was hard to believe that only moments before, he'd felt entirely in control, wielding his power with confidence. But now, sitting in the back of a patrol car, with his career and reputation destroyed, he was nothing more than a criminal in custody. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with friends. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more intriguing stories. Have a great day.